Thank you to our sponsor of today's video, Skillshare, the biggest online community for creatives. More on them later on. Hi, I'm Ashley, and one thing you need to know about me is I hate when people try to defend themselves and it's contradiction after contradiction, lie after lie. Stupidity trying to cosplay as tortured or misunderstood genius. Because 99% of the time, you're probably an incel just with access to a big budget. In this attitude, this kind of person is not anything new. We talked about this earlier in the year on the Dan Schneider video that I made, if you recall, if you were there. We covered his apology, or his statements I should say, following the Quiet on Set documentary release, which covered the allegations following Schneider and the way that he treated not only his co-stars, but his team behind the camera as well. That was a mess, if you recall. This is not much different. If you don't know, Ryan Murphy, who has created shows such as Glee, Scream Queens, American Horror Story, and American Crime Story, has come out with a new season in his anthology series called Monsters, where basically it follows famous cases of quote-unquote monsters that have been involved in serious crime cases. And I hate to say it after listing all his shows, but I'm very familiar with his work, especially Glee. Not to bring the skeletons out of the closet, but I was a Gleek, okay? Darren Criss was my Coco Melon. You put that beautiful of a man singing my favorite pop songs, that's it. I'm sold. I actually also adored the first season of Scream Queens. I think Ryan Murphy really excels in dark humor or shows that have a little bit more of a low-stake plot line. American Horror Story, I fell off because once Jessica Lange said bye, so did I. American Crime Story, I watched the OJ season just because I kind of knew a lot about the case. And as far as Monsters, I never watched the first season that covered Jeffrey Dahmer because I heard one, it was beyond gruesome. So many people talked about how they couldn't even finish the show. And two, there was a lack of disrespect for the people involved in the case. A lot of the families of the victims that were depicted in the show said that the show was traumatizing. It was rehashing grotesque details just for shock value or for entertainment, and also that no one was contacted about the series. Ryan Murphy, though, says something different. In a Variety article I found, it states, Murphy alluded to the controversy surrounding the hit Netflix show at an event at Los Angeles's DGA Theater on Thursday, saying the subject matter is something that we researched for a very long time. Over the course of the three and a half years when we were really writing it, working on it, we reached out to around 20 of the victims' families and friends, trying to get input, trying to talk to people, and not a single person responded to us in that process. So we relied very, very heavily on our incredible group of researchers who, I don't even know how they found a lot of this stuff, but it was just like a night and day effort trying to uncover the truth of these people. So there's that. Why am I telling you this? Because I want you to remember that statement from Ryan. Put a pin in it. Anyway, the show was successful amid the controversy. Granted, it is sitting at a 57% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it got people talking and viewing. And it got people making thirst edits of not only Evan Peters, but the actual Jeffrey Dahmer, which is a whole other conversation in itself. Because what is wrong with some of y'all?
Bombastic side eye. Criminal offensive side eye.
I mean, all I'm saying, I would have been a victim.
You're masturbating over Jeffrey Dahmer.
One particular episode where he's got his head on like his victim's heart and something just came over me. Yeah, I just had to look after myself, if you know what I mean. And now it's a regular thing. But like, it's just like, it's
Hang
a
on.
crazy fantasy.
Not just masturbating over Jeffrey Dahmer, but over him listening to a heart that he's harvested out of someone's
No,
chest.
he's going to harvest it.
Oh, well, excuse me, that's way more understandable.
I do think we as a society have been a little desensitized to the nature of true crime stories just because it's become such a life of its own. It's become such a genre of its own. And I'm not bashing anyone who enjoys it, who consumes it, because I do understand to a certain point the fascination of it, of the human mind, of how someone could actually commit these crimes. However, I am bashing Hollywood, the producers, the executives, the Ryan Murphys, who know this and are going to exploit not only the crimes, not only the victims, but you as well, because they know there is a lot of money involved. To me, there needs to be some sort of responsibility when covering cases like this, just so you are not glorifying the events, the people, or the victims. It's weird. So for me personally, I ended up not watching Dahmer, but I heard there was a second season coming out of Monsters. I saw the trailer and found out it was for the Menendez brothers case, which I knew the basic outline of the case going into this whole thing, This whole thing, meaning watching the show, plus the documentary that came out a week later on Netflix that actually has voice recordings of the brothers talking about the story. Definitely recommend that over the show. But for anyone who doesn't know, Lyle and Eric Menendez killed their parents in 1989, and throughout the trial we find out that they had been abused primarily from the father and was scared for their life. A lot of people had different theories about the case and the brothers based on their preconceived notions of rich kids coming from Beverly Hills that I personally think affected not only the way the trial was ran, but also public opinion. Their first trial ended up being a hung jury, which meant that they had to basically redo the whole entire trial again. Relive every painful detail of what had happened to them and how the murder took place. Except this time, the second trial, the judge ruled in favor of not having all the abuse evidence in play, which therefore honestly sunk the brothers' case. Any fighting chance that they had at trying to get like a manslaughter conviction was out the window. That wasn't even on the plate. Let's start there for the second trial. They ended up being convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, which they are still carrying out to this day. It's been over 30 years. So again, when the show was announced, I was a little intrigued, but not enough to actually watch the show. Until this statement from Ryan Murphy came out. So the show comes out, right? Everyone's talking about it. There's controversy. And Ryan Murphy says this in response to all that. The Menendez brothers should be sending me flowers. Crazy first sentence. They haven't had so much attention in 30 years, and it's gotten the attention of not only this country, but all over the world. There's sort of an outpouring of interest in their lives and in the case. I know for a fact that many people have offered to help them because of the interest of my show and what we did. There's no world that we live in where the Menendez brothers or their wives or lawyers would say, you know what, that was a wonderful, accurate depiction of our clients. That was never going to happen, and I wasn't interested in that happening. Basically saying, I don't care if I piss the people who are closest to this trial off, because they should be thanking me. They should put me on a pedestal for putting their story out there. I'm the one that did it. Like, he's acting like this is an underground case that no one has heard of, that no one has talked about, and he is the one that's shedding light on it. As if there haven't been dozens of YouTube videos from years ago uploaded talking about the case with significant views. As if this case didn't blow up years ago on TikTok. This was one of the biggest cases in the 90s.
In the fall of 2020, my son came to me and he said, Dad, you have to take a look at TikTok. It's full of Menendez brothers videos.
The only reason we're doing this special is because of the TikTok movement to free the Menendez.
The first trial actually happened right before the O.J. Simpson trial, which he also covered in his other show, which I have a theory about because he covered it in American Crime Story, and as far as I know, it hasn't been canceled, but there's been no talk of a new season. Personally, what I believe happened, because in that show, they depicted the stories more true to life and more true to fact, that wasn't interesting. That's not what sells, okay? That doesn't get the thirst edits online. But you know what does? Sensationalized characters. What works for Ryan Murphy and has been a theme in a lot of his shows? Male-on-male relationships, sexual tension, or ambiguity. So then what exactly is the purpose of this show? What did Ryan set out to do? What did he set out to achieve when creating this season? He said, I was interested in doing something about everybody involved in this case, including the parents and their perspectives. We're not presenting any of it as truth, he said. We're presenting it as someone's opinion. All of that stuff is woven into a narrative that Dominick Dunne talked about in articles. Dominick Dunne at the time was a Vanity Fair writer. It was also thrown up in court several times. I'm not saying that it happened. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm saying that it was a part of the big folkloric tapestry of that case that might have swayed juries in a certain way or not. It's informed an entire generation about that case and launched millions of conversations about sexual abuse. The show doesn't shy away from any of these topics. It brings with it a fair share of controversy, but also, I don't think the brothers have seen it from what I understand. And I think that the actors do such a wonderful job with a very difficult subject, really layering in points of view and presentation. I don't think the brothers' relatives understand what the show is about. Pause, because that's crazy. How are the relatives not gonna know what the show is about when they're the closest ones to the trial, and to the brothers, and to the victims? More than that, I think that male sexual abuse is something that's really not been talked about a lot in our culture. Certainly not then when these trials happened, and certainly not even now. But I think people are talking about that, and I find that to be gratifying and good. Okay, so here's where I have the biggest problem with the show. You want to be the voice for change. The voice that showcases that male abuse is real. That there are victims out there. But yet, you want to present your show not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but almost the whole show with this idea that they are lying about being sexually abused. I understand. Well, I don't understand actually this idea of showing that people lie about being abused, especially to the extent that they were. But let's say I did. Let's say I understand that you want to showcase different opinions of this case. Because people did believe that. People still believe that. So why not have that be in a passing conversation between other characters in your show? Why not have that idea presented in the trial within the testimonies? Why have a scene of Lyle practicing what he's going to say on the stand, alluding to that it is all a lie?
I need to feel the pain of that, Lyle.
Emotions? Do you want me to cry?
And I told her that I would help her stop taking so many fucking pills.
Why have a 30-minute one-shot monologue about the abuse Eric endured, which was fabulous, by the way. Great acting. Fabulous acting. But why give him a look to the camera after saying all of that to allude yet again this might not be the truth?
I will never really know who I am if I don't get out of here.
It perpetuates this narrative that people lie about abuse. There is tons of evidence from psychologists, doctors, families, friends that have seen the father abusing them in one way or another. And on top of that, recently there was someone else who came forward with the information that they had been abused by the father. He was in a band that the father was in charge of while he was still alive. Now this is pretty recent, this information, so it not being in the show doesn't surprise me because of production times, but it is crazy because it does kind of drive home that idea that you need other outside voices to believe the original victim. That you need that new evidence when there's been plenty of evidence before of, hey, maybe they're not lying. And I get it, society sucks. Society is like 25 years behind on where we need to be with the abuse conversation. It's evident in the way that Ryan presents the boys in this trial, and it's evident in the trials that we see today. All of this creates a very dangerous environment on what a victim looks like, what a victim acts like, and more importantly, what a victim says in the terms of their story. Which is ironic, because Ryan Murphy wants to say that he has all these perspectives in his show. That 60 to 65% of the show is told in favor of what the brothers have been claiming happened for years. So why say you are trying to tell the story through different perspectives and never reach out to get the perspective of the people who are still alive and are the closest thing to the case? If Kim Kardashian can go to the prison and talk to the brothers, so can you. He even has said, I have no interest in talking to them. It's very good that Cooper, the actor, has a relationship with them, and I'm very close, obviously, with Kim, who has spoken to them. I love Kim, and I believe she does God's work. I believe in prison reform. I believe in everything she believes in. I don't know what I would say to them. What would I ask them? I know what their perspective is. I'm sorry, are you the third brother? Were you there? Were you the one with the shotgun killing your parents? Were you the one getting sexually abused with miscellaneous objects? Were you being forced to take showers with your father all the way up until you were 18 years old? No, you have no idea what their perspective is. You have no idea what their story is. And to just brush it off and say, I already know everything about them. I know what they would say. I don't need to talk to them, is disgusting. You made how much money off of this, and you couldn't give them 5 minutes of your time. And you're standing 10 toes behind that. That's crazy. But you know what it is? It's the fact that Lyle and Eric are imperfect victims. And it's evident at the time of the trial that people had a hard time believing that these rich kids who grew up well off could ever have it rough.
These two arrogant brothers are gonna fry.
People keep yelling things like, you're innocent and you're so hot.
And also kiss each other again.
And truly, there really is no such thing as a perfect victim, but there's always going to be that case of, well, they should have done that. They should have said this. Well, they hit back. They did that. They did this. There's no such thing as a perfect victim. We have to get that mentality out of our head. In this show, really does only rely on 2 different perspectives, 2 different narratives, 2 different storytelling throughout the entire season. Either Lyle and Eric are victims and killed their parents out of genuine fear, or Lyle and Eric are these heartless, rich, and spoiled kids who will lie and cheat the system to get off scotch-free, meaning that they lied about all the abuse. Which again, if you're championing for abuse victims, why have that? Or at least why have that to the extent that you did, where you're watching the entire show and you have no idea what to believe. Actually, now that I think about it, the whole narrative of having it be like different perspectives and that you are a jury trying to decide what is the truth kind of feels like a cop-out. Either that or you're really bad at structuring your shows. And now you have the poor actors out on the front lines defending you.
All of these points of view to ultimately have the audience act as a jury. And so,
if anything, have the whole show structured around the trial. Have it where evidence did contradict, or people say something on the stand and then cut to these little clips to illustrate what you are saying. The whole back and forth that has been going on just feels a little messy, if I'm being honest. Also felt like it was about 3 or 4 episodes too long, but I digress. Also, the dramatization of Lyle's character was absolutely insane. I knew within the first few minutes of the first episode what was going to happen. It was going to be this out-of-world character that you didn't want to root for. So the real-life Eric actually made a statement on this saying, "I believed we had moved beyond the lies and ruinous character portrayal of Lyle, creating a caricature of Lyle rooted in horrible and blatant lies rampant in the show. I can only believe they were done so on purpose. It is with a heavy heart that I say I believe Ryan Murphy cannot be this naive and inaccurate about the facts of our lives so as to do this without bad intent." Especially because, listen to this little blurb from the statement from the Menendez family. Murphy claims he spent years researching the case, but in the end relied on debunked Dominick Dunne, the pro-prosecution hack, to justify his slander against us and never spoke to us. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? This justification's getting a little old, don't you think? I don't know. So speaking of Dominick Dunne, right? I hope I'm saying his last name right. But he is presented in the show, like he's a full-on character in the show that we see. And he has these little moments where he essentially is delivering gossip or theories of the show, which is where those theories and gossip should have stayed. Not present throughout the whole show. But anyway, he is infamous for the article that he writes involving the case. It is titled "Nightmare on Elm Drive." Now, it's the only article I have read from him, and as far as I'm aware, he has written a lot, but I can only speak on this one as I've read it. But it's just really funny to me because Ryan's sitting here talking about, you know, research this, research that. But if you read the article, the show follows the structure of the article pretty much to a T, except the incest rumor. Let me just say, there is absolutely no evidence, none, zip, zero, of there being an incestual relationship between Lyle and Eric. The only story there is Lyle testifying that he did touch his brother one time in the woods when they were young because he was copying what his dad was doing to him. You know, essentially continuing the cycle of abuse. But that testimony is heartbreaking. It's him apologizing on the stand to his brother for that. And this article only has one line about the incest. One. Out of the many, many, many pages that it is. One line. And this is the article that they refer to in the show, by the way, which is why I decided to read it. But in the same paragraph of that rumor, he also outlines how people were saying that they shot Kitty, the mom, well, basically in her kitty, which was not true. Autopsies, like reports like that exist for a reason. It's literally just a baseless rumor, like the incest one, but yet that is heavily portrayed in the show. Interesting. The most infamous one, and I'm sure if you're online you've probably seen it, is from Dominick's point of view. He's at like a dinner or whatever talking to people about the gossip that he's heard, and we are shown a scene of the brothers in the shower together where Kitty finds them. Now I will say in the show, with the context, it is like a rumor, okay? It's not based in facts. However, you have to take that scene in consideration because of the kiss they share.
Lives.
Because of the suggestive dancing that they do together. And everyone sees it and grosses out. And the overall homoerotic way that they touch each other. Oh, and not to mention the actual poster for the show. You have the two brothers shirtless, and look how he's holding on to his brother like that. Like, come on. You know what sells because you have done it in your past work. You know having these hot actors that people can thirst over, or these people who have a weird fetish with, you know, male-on-male relationships, are going to cling on to this and make you so much money. They're gonna make your pockets so heavy that you don't mind leaving behind your moral integrity when it comes to accurately portraying the case and the people involved in it. I promise you, it's not you being the brave one to talk about controversial topics or even show it. It's dangerous marketing and it's irresponsible directing. And while we're on the topic of incest, yay! Let's make one thing clear. While there are cases where this does happen, where the abused becomes the abuser and the cycle continues, that is not the truth for most cases. And I know Ryan Murphy knows about this whole abuse cycle because in episode 6, right? Yeah, he tried to show that the reason the dad does this to his kids is because he was abused in his past.
Lo que tú me hiciste pasar, ¿tú te acuerdas de eso?
¡Coño! ¿Qué te pasó a ti también? ¡Que Marta me lo dijo!
Now, as far as I'm aware, there's no evidence of that. As far as I'm aware, there was no thought of that. There was no theory of that. As far as I'm aware, it's an attempt to humanize the dad in the 6th episode. Yes, the 6th episode, aka an hour-long episode where we get the backstory of him and Kitty. Which at that point, who gives a f***? Because the man that physically, emotionally, and sexually abused these kids gets a whole backstory, and we find out about his life and why he is the way that he is. Personally, this episode really annoyed me, and it felt like such a waste of time because primarily the subject matter, but also the placement in the show, because this episode comes right after the 30-minute monologue that Eric delivers outlining the horrific abuse that he went through. Oh, and don't forget the ending scene where he makes it look like I might be lying. So after seeing all that, why would I care about the dad? Put it somewhere else in the show or sprinkle it throughout the show. Like, don't make me sit here for an hour and make me feel bad that I don't like this man. Which, by the way, the actor Javier, ooh, he did so good. All the actors did so good in the show. But if I saw that man in person, I'm walking across the street. I should say, honestly, I don't have any problems with any of the actors a part of the show, the crew. At the end of the day, they were on set to do a job. Do I wish some things were different? Of course. But I actually really do appreciate Cooper standing up for the brothers as much as he can during this press run for the show.
I don't want to discredit the fact that these kids did murder their parents with shotguns and like they did need to serve time. Yeah. But I think the time is up. They've served their time. Because
guess who isn't? Our favorite producer, Ryan Murphy. Listen to this. I wouldn't go so far as to say they should be freed, but I think that their case should be re-examined, and I think new evidence should be presented, he said. If that case was tried and all the evidence was allowed in today, I think they probably would have been charged and found guilty of manslaughter, and they would be out of jail now. So you don't think they should be free, but yet you recognize they should have been charged with manslaughter, therefore they should be out of jail, therefore they should be free. Does this man love to hear himself talk? Like, he really wants to play this I'm in the middle, just presenting all the different sides in the info, but he clearly has a bias. And we know that for sure from a single scene in the show. So in the horrendous Dad and Kitty episode, we see them go on a boat ride to catch sharks or whatever, who cares? We get the perspective of the boys being scared and the parents being the parents, and it sets up this hostile energy. The boat ride actually took place the day before the murders. The episode goes back and forth on showing that the parents are the ones being verbally abused and taken advantage of by their kids, and also the parents aren't perfect, but maybe they're trying to get better. Again, waste of time, who cares? The very last scene of this show has us return to that boat ride, and they show the parents happy as can be, willing to work on everything to make a better life for themselves and for their kids. It pans over to the brothers then, where Eric asks Lyle, "You're not chickening out, are you?"
Let's fucking do it.
Meaning that the murders were planned, they're killers, and the parents have no idea what was coming and maybe didn't deserve it at all. Do you understand? This is the last scene of the show. That is the last impression you have of the story, which typically in narratives like this is reserved for like a big reveal or is reserved for the truth to come out, because they could have just ended it on the brothers being separated on their way to prison and that would have been fine. But no, they decided to end it on that note. And with that in mind, argue then whether the murder was planned or not. Make that your central conflict and go back and forth on that, not on the abuse. At that point, it's just the assassination of the brothers' characters and the assassination of good storytelling. I'll say it. Because there was also this whole plot, just real quick, right? About Eric's sexuality. And that I find so disturbing. Because Ryan tends to have these scenes in his shows that are catering to certain people, and this was no different. There is an emotional scene in the 5th episode where Eric is outlining, you know, the abuse and everything like we talked about. And he's talking about the complicated emotions that come with it because he feels that is the only time that his dad loves him. It created a lot of confusing emotions for him, understandably. And I think because with him it happened for so long, it literally happened like up to the week of them getting murdered. I think there was this idea, this rumor that because it went on so long, that he must be gay, that he must have somewhat enjoyed it. And we know this because Eric himself came out in an interview and was like, no, I'm not gay.
Are you gay?
No. No, the prosecutor brought that up because I was sexually molested. He felt in his own thinking that if I was sodomized by my father, that I must have enjoyed it. I must be gay, and the people that are gay out there must be sexually molested or they wouldn't be, is what he felt. It was upsetting to hear, but I'm not gay.
You like dudes, right?
What? No. I like being around you.
It's okay to be who you are.
Not in my family.
Which in that feels like we should respect that. Like that's a boundary. Like you don't assume sexuality, especially when someone has stated what they are. Granted, if Eric was to literally come out tomorrow, I'm gonna respect that as well. Yeah, so that just rubbed me the wrong way. So overall, what are my thoughts? I think someone needs to give Ryan Murphy a reality check. I do not think he's doing God's work. Is it a boost in popularity? Yes, I'm not gonna deny that, but do I think he is like the sole reason of it? No. Not at all. I do agree with him, and I agree with the brothers, because the brothers themselves have said, we have killed the parents. We know it is bad. It is bad. Murder is bad. That was wrong. I don't think anyone here is arguing that. Personally, I believe in rehabilitation. I think the prison system is flawed, and I think they should be free. You don't have to agree with me. That's just my opinion. Because also, if the sister of Kitty, of the mom who was murdered, is coming out and saying they feel a certain way, and other family members are coming out and saying that as well, who are we to say that they shouldn't be out of prison? The people who are the closest to the murders, to the people, to the victims, to the story, are going to have the best idea of what happened. And it's always, you know, when it comes to these cases, like think of the family, think of this, think of that. I don't have to think. They're telling me. They are telling you what they feel, and yet it's still an argument about what is wrong and what is right. It's very fascinating and further illustrates that in these cases, sometimes it's not about the evidence or the situation, but merely how it is presented. How likable are these people? How much are you willing to believe them? And I wish Ryan could have focused more on that than making a show that is this convoluted. What's not convoluted though? The sponsor of today's video. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is the largest online community with thousands of classes, ranging from production, from art, from freelance, productivity, you name it, they got it. And it's for creatives by creatives. It's very fun, very cool. You can take your hobbies or further your passions with these classes that are curated for you and designed for you to complete at your own pace, which I personally really love. Your girl has become very busy. I don't always have all the time in the day to do it, you know? But I still want to become better at my craft. I still want to create better, more fun, more entertaining videos, and maybe in a format kind of like this one that's a little different for me. So I decided to look at this course from Mr. Brownlee himself. I know you know who he is. You've seen him on YouTube before. He has a class outlining how he makes videos, from the research of it, the script process, and the editing. I definitely want to do more videos like this in the future, so it's really helpful to kind of learn how to structure a video that is a bit different than what I usually make from someone who has been doing it for years. For sure recommend it, because no matter what type of content you do make, you are definitely going to get something out of this course. So join me and so many others who are learning and growing by the day. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So what are you waiting for? Get started today. And thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I know it was something a little bit different, a little darker than usual. Usually we're sitting here laughing, hee-hee-hawing. I want to start a riot. And honestly, you don't have to agree with everything I said in the video or any of the people who are commenting down below, but let's try to keep it respectful. That's my only ask. Anyway, I love you guys a lot. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff I'm supposed to say. And Ryan, don't sue me. Okay?